My name is Jerry Gill. Today is November 17th, 2009. I'm visiting with Gail Gillilan on the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Gail, thank you for being with us today and kind of giving us some background information on our Scholar Enrichment and Recognition Program here at Oklahoma State University.
Okay.
Gail, could we just start a little bit maybe with the beginning? I mean, a little bit about where you grew up, your family, early experiences in life.
And we have how long to do this? I was born in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
I have always lived in Oklahoma. I lived after I got married, lived in Fairview for a couple of years and lived in Watauga for a year, and then we moved back to Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
Been in Stillwater since 1988. My husband was transferred up here with his job, and we've had 3 children graduate from Stillwater High School.
Right. Did you graduate in Watauga, then high school in Watauga?
No, I graduated from Northwest Classen High School in Oklahoma City.
Okay, great, super. And again, when you moved what year to Stillwater?
In 1988.
1988. Okay, thank you. Could you kind of share a little bit, Gail, maybe some of your work experiences at Oklahoma State University?
The first job I had working at OSU, I started in, at the time it was called home ec, worked for a professor doing research in the consumer studies area. I worked for her for almost a year before she took a job out of state. Then I started working in the University Scholarships office in the summer of 1989. Started working with Bob Grauman. We handled the majority of the scholarships for entering freshmen, and did that for several years until they took some of those responsibilities into the financial aid office, and we became the Scholar Development Recognition Office and worked mainly with the students applying for the prestigious scholarships.
Good. Do you remember what year that was? Late 90s somewhere, was it?
That was in, did I started working for Bob Grauman, or that we switched?
When he changed over to
that
the
was
Scholar Development Program?
Early 90s, I would guess 92.
92, okay. Great, super. What interested you in the Scholar Development Program? Of course, you were already working with Bob in scholarships, but were you intrigued by that change?
I was. My first thought, of course, was taking away all the applications for incoming freshmen. What were we going to do? We weren't going to have very many people to work with. That didn't last very long, because we started working with, as I always put it, the best students on campus. And we work anywhere from a couple of hundred to a couple of thousand each year.
Wow.
Not all of them go on, for national scholarships, but.
Well, Gail, maybe we could kind of talk about the different components of the Scholar Development and Recognition Program, maybe starting with the Freshman Research Project. Okay. How are the Freshman Research Projects funded, and how much are the grants?
Right now, the funding is each student gets $800 a year. The funding is through a Roberson Trust, money that had been basically left to OSU. We took over the Freshman Research Program about 6 years ago. The students apply. They're usually high school seniors that are interested in doing some type of research. We try to then match them up with different professors in each college that is doing research in the area the student's interested in.
Gail, how do you promote, your office and the university promote the Freshman Scholars Program to seniors?
We rely a lot on the undergraduate admissions office, and since they are the ones that actually go out into the high schools and visit with the students. We have brochures available that they can take and give to the students, and we ask them to mention it to the students. Most of the time they can, as they are talking with students, the student will say, I'm interested in doing this, or I'm interested in going into research, or I'm interested in going into medical school, or anything like that, where there might be research involved, and they give them our information about our office and the brochure, and then allow the students to fill out the application and turn it in.
It's my understanding that undergraduate research projects, grants like this are pretty unusual for universities. Is there a little bit of a buzz out there around the state? I mean, other kids at Oklahoma State talk to the kids they know back in high school about it?
I was not aware that undergraduate research was not available at every university across the country. We've had the privilege of working with the Wentz Foundation since about 1995, and part of their stipulation was it go to undergraduates doing research. And as Dr. Groman has gone out around the country talking about our program and the undergraduate research the students are doing, he's getting feedback from other universities asking, the main thing was, how do you get the funding? Where do you get the money to give the students to do it? And of course it was just money that had been left to OSU, so we've just had the privilege of directing the students to do research.
You know, how many applications in a typical year would you have, and out of those, how many would you award?
In the research area, we could have...
In the freshman research program.
In the freshman research, generally 75, 80 applications. We try to award up to 60. We started doing that, like I said, several years ago. Now the colleges are selecting the students themselves from our information, and we try to limit it at right now to 10 students per college. That way we can kind of spread it out, so to speak, around the 6 colleges.
So there's not a one committee that makes a decision for all of you. Each college has its own selection process or committee or whatever.
Right. The colleges asked about 2 years ago if they could start making the selections themselves, and that was fine with us.
A lot of hassle, right?
Right.
glad to let them have it.
They're going to be working with the students on a day-to-day basis more than we would, so it only seemed right.
Well, Gail, could you help us kind of understand what are the steps in that for a freshman scholar, and what are the expectations of them if they accept that $800 grant you're talking about?
Okay, most of them will have an orientation course in the fall semester. How to do research, what research is going on across the university or in the area that they're interested in. Each college has their own orientation course that they have the students in. Then usually the second semester the students are paired up with a professor that is already doing research, and they're just helping in any way they can, learning different ways to doing research, and hopefully some of them will end up with publications from helping the professor.
Does the honors program help identify some students? I mean, can a student come in midterm and we're in the second semester? Do they have to come in the freshman fall?
Right now it's set up on an academic year basis,
okay.
So they have to come in starting in the fall and ending in the spring semester. And the students do not have to be in the honors program. Is there
a lot of overlap there, though?
There is a lot of overlap between the honors program and scholar development.
Well, Gail, from your perspective, how important is having the freshman research grants and that money available for that part of it? How important is that to the scholar development program?
It is important because, of course, every student wants money. That's kind of normal with everyone. $800 is not really going to make a definite decision for a student because of the fact that it's just not that much. But it's getting into the research area, getting to work with the professors, in some cases on a one-to-one basis, that really makes the difference.
Gail, you're talking about the professors they get to work with in a more scholarly, if you will, kind of setting in their research. From the other side of that, you said the students really like that as an opportunity. How do the faculty feel about that? Do you get much participation? I mean, can you identify some people who have been very active in that, or?
Identify as you want me to start naming names?
Sure, at the risk of leaving some out, Gail, I understand, but there are some professors that really enjoy that and really get engaged in that.
There are quite a few. It's hard to come up with professors because they just on the spot. You put me on the spot here.
That's okay.
Some of the departments, though, I can think of, like the biochemistry is a real big department on freshman research, and then going on into Wentz research later on with upperclassmen. We have a lot of them in ag econ area. We have quite a few in the chemistry, And then engineering, every department almost in engineering has been able to work with research.
And English has been fairly involved?
English has had some, yes. In fact, our only Rhodes Scholar was an English major, and he had a Wentz project. We did not have the freshman research program at the time he started, though.
Okay. Well, we've talked about in the Wentz, research project. Maybe we'll move to that component of the scholar development program. So the Wentz program, if I'm right, is it for sophomores through seniors?
Correct.
Okay. How does it, first of all, maybe how does it build on, or is it connected in any way with our freshman research program?
Well, the idea is if the student comes in as a freshman research scholar doing research their freshman year, that they would want to continue during research. The difference with the Wentz program is that it has to be student-oriented research. It does not have to be completely original ideas from the student, just maybe something a little different than what a professor is doing research on. Maybe the student has been working with the professor and wants to take that research in a different direction, and they can apply for the Wentz research project then. They have to, of course, select a professor to kind of be their mentor, to supervise their research. We don't let them just go out and do it on their own.
Is there a pretty good carryover from students that participate in the freshman research project that continues on to the Wentz?
Quite a few.
Research.
Quite a few. Some of them may not get a Wentz award for their sophomore year, but they may for their junior or senior year. So it's not any kind of a guarantee, but it really helps them open the door into knowing more professors and what research is going on.
What is the application procedure, Gail, for that? Is there a committee that reviews those?
For the Wentz research?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, the student has to fill out what we call the project description, and then the mentor or the professor would fill out a form basically indicating how he or she would assist or supervise the student. Then we have a committee selected from a representative of each of the 6 colleges. They look at blind applications. They do not know the student's name. They do not know the professor's name. They just go strictly with the project description, and they rank them from basically, right now it's ranking of 1 to 5. 1 meaning, yes, I feel that this project needs to be funded, and 5 meaning no. And then we tally all those rankings from each of the 6 committee members and try to fund anywhere from 40 to 60 research projects each year.
And Gail, how many applications would you normally have to get those 40 to 60?
Some years we have 100, 120. Other years we've had almost 300. So it just varies every year.
So you're out of maybe as many as up to as many as 300, you'll only award maybe 40, 50, 60?
Yes.
So it's pretty competitive then?
It's very competitive.
What is the average amount of the research grant?
Right now it's valued at $4,500 a year.
So that's a step up from $800.
That is a big step up, yes.
I see. Well, Gail, what are the expectations? More stipends, so obviously there's greater expectations. Right. So what are the expectations of a Wentz scholar then?
During research?
Research Wentz, okay. Research scholar.
Their expectations is hopefully they will go on during research. We may, our hope is that one of these students working on research as an undergraduate will go on to graduate school, do more research, and in some cases, come up with wonderful inventions, cure for cancer or something.
What would be the total amount in any given year normally that you award for Wentz scholar projects? For
projects and scholarships both, we have awarded up to $700,000 a year.
Depending on, I guess, what the earnings from the Lew Wentz Fund are.
It depends every year on basically the interest that the funding gets.
In addition to, Gail, the benefits that they get that you described from the research, Is this also, does this help prepare them for competition for national prestigious scholarships?
Yes,
and
it
if so,
does.
how does that work?
One area that comes to mind is the Goldwater Scholarship. OSU as a university can nominate 4 students each year to compete for the national awards for the Goldwater. That is based on your engineering, your sciences, your math areas. During research has helped the students greatly in winning the Goldwater. In fact, 2 years ago we had 3 students win the national Goldwater competition. All 3 of them had had multiple Wentz research projects.
Is that then that is a pretty large factor, Gail, in the selection process? So many of these national scholarships is research they've done, and do
Yes.
then they look at that then? I mean, they submit their work along with their application, for example, to the committees?
Or they have at least cited their research. A lot of the students have been named in publications where they may not be the #1 researcher, but they're at least on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
So that counts towards publications. It helps with them get internships in the summer.
Could you describe the working relationship with the Lew Wentz board and perhaps Trish Houston, who's their administrator?
Okay.
How does she interact with the scholarship selection in any way?
She is more of an ad hoc member of the committee. She's always there. She, of course, tells us how much money, how many awards we can award each year. But she is more of a hands-off when it comes to which projects are awarded. She leaves that up to the faculty because they are the ones that are much more familiar with the areas and, you know, whether the project can actually be done in an academic year, can it be done by a student. And then each spring we have the students that have been doing research projects during the academic year. We have a seminar where they have poster sessions and present their research. And Trish is always there. Several of the Wentz board members usually come to that so they can congratulate the students on their research.
Gail, you mentioned earlier, in addition to the Wentz research projects, which is where they sort of focus their giving, there's also some other Wentz scholarships awarded. Could you explain those? There
is a general Wentz scholarship. Main requirements are, you know, be an undergraduate, having finished at least 12 hours at OSU, have a minimum of a 3-point grade point average. Then there's a short essay to write. The committees usually look at the activities, extracurricular and curricular activities that the student is going through, and try to award as many scholarships as they can. We have another scholarship for the non-traditional students. This one was started about 10 years ago at the request of a non-traditional student who had, in most cases, a non-traditional student is someone who has been either not gone to college right out of high school or started a year or 2 in college and then left for anywhere from 20 years or so, and then are coming back to college to try and finish their degree. And in most cases they are able to pay their tuition. It's the books that they are having trouble paying for. Some books, as you know, could be a couple of $100s per textbook. So we started this scholarship. It's called the Non-Traditional Textbook Award, and it's awarded to either part-time or full-time non-traditional students. And the idea is for it to go to basically help pay for their textbooks.
How many in each of those categories, the non-traditional and then the general scholarship, would you award in a given year?
Non-traditional is usually a small number, average 20 each year. The general scholarship has been anywhere from 50 to 120 each year. Again, it depends on funding, how much money is available.
And that's in addition to the research
Correct.
grants. And about how much would be an average amount of a scholarship in the general scholarship?
The general scholarship right now is $2,700. And the non-traditional book scholarship for a full-time student is $1,500.
How important is the Lew Wentz Foundation relationship to the Scholar Development Office? Could you talk a little bit about that?
The relationship, in the way of funding, it's very instrumental in our progress. Do they come to the college? I mean, are they on a day-to-day basis? Do we talk to them? No. Basically, we just see the Wentz board once a year. They have a board meeting in the fall, of which Dr. Grauman and the president of the university always go. And that's where we find out exactly how much funding we're going to have for the next academic year. And then as many of the board members as can come in April to our end of the year program.
Gail, how long has they've shifted over the years? I had the opportunity to interview Trish Houston, their administrator, and my understanding from our conversation was that sort of where they focus or target their money has changed perhaps over the years from from loans to work study to scholarships then to research project. When did they change their emphasis over to Wentz research projects? When did that occur?
If I remember right, it occurred about 1994-95. If I remember right, the first research projects we awarded were starting the fall of 1995. And that's pardon me, we had just taken over the program about a year before that, the Wentz program in total. And that's when they were shifting from, as you put it, a service scholarship where the students would do like a work study type situation into the research and general scholarship programs.
And how important, Gail, was that to influencing and enhancing our scholar development program and preparing students for national competition?
I think that was the best thing, because having the money to award scholarships, having the money to award the research projects, some of the national scholarships, that's what the competitions, that's what they look for, is the research the students have done, and it's just helped a great deal.
Well, Gail, perhaps maybe we could focus a little bit on the preparation of students for national competition and talk about that. You know, OSU has received some pretty phenomenal national recognition and had great success beyond, I think, what probably anyone would imagine on the front end in competition for Gates Cambridge scholarships, for Marshall Truman, even had a Rhodes Scholar, et cetera. Could we just sort of step back and you can kind of take me through the process of how do we identify and sort of prepare and groom and coach, if you will, students to not that that's the sole purpose of the scholar development program, but speaking from that perspective, we identify students and they sort of self-identify themselves and want to compete. What's that process and how does that work?
Okay. One thing we do is in the fall, each fall, we contact the professors across campus shortly after this fall semester has started, asking them to identify students who are active in class, participate in class, doing well on tests and class discussions and so forth. We invite them to a reception where we talk about what our office does. We talk about the Wentz program, we talk about research, we talk about the national competitions for the national scholarships. Most of the students we invite are in the freshman category. We try to tell them that, not to necessarily stay in one major, to possibly consider having a minor or a second major, because it would make them more competitive in national scholarships. Then we try to lead them towards applying for Wentz scholarships each year, just to keep in contact with them for one thing. In the way of when it comes time to apply for national scholarships, again, most of them, they apply like the Rhodes, Marshall, Gates, they apply as a senior. The Truman, they apply as in their junior year. Things like the Goldwater, they can apply either as a sophomore or a junior. The UDAL, which is students going into environmental areas, or Native Americans going into tribal policy or medicine, they can apply for those as sophomores or juniors. Most of them, the UDAL, the Goldwater, the Truman, we have an OSU competition first. In fact, we've just finished receiving applications from the students. And to give you a kind of a walkthrough, the Truman and the students would apply, fill out the application, you know, general information, resume. Truman is based on careers in public service, so that's one of the things that we have to see. The student actually has been doing public service, and the career goals that they have set for themselves will end up in public service. Then we have a committee that faculty across campus that go over the applications. We generally select anywhere from 6 to 10 students to come in for on-campus interviews. OSU can only nominate 4 students each year to go on to the national competition. And then the students that are selected for that, we work with them on a one-to-one basis on filling out the national application. You know, editing their essays, their making sure their applications are turned in on time, the transcripts, letters of recommendation, everything is turned in on time.
So is that true? You mentioned it for the Truman, but is that true for other scholarships where we have more students who will apply then we can go forward? We have a OSU, if you will, as you're using your competition here locally to decide who's going to get to represent the university.
Yes, that each one. We do not select them ourselves. There's just no way we could do that on our own. And we have had the privilege of working with professors across every area on campus. And we've never had anyone turn us down to be on one of our committees. And they're just delighted to be able to work with the students and help select the students and urge them on for all the competitions.
And Gail, what could I assume then that for the different kinds of competition you'll have professors from different areas, because it may be more liberal arts or it might be more of a hard sciences area depending on what the focus of that.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, wonderful. You talked about then after, you know, say there's, just using the Truman as an example, we've selected 4 Truman young men and women to represent the university. And you said then we work with them and coach them. Could you describe some of the things we do? You talked about we help them with the application form. I say we, your office helps them with the application forms and et cetera. And what other ways do you prepare them for competition?
Several years ago, all the national applications were on paper. So it was just, one thing was just compiling all the papers. Now, most of the national competitions have gone to online areas. It's kind of hard when you've been working with paper every day for years to not have that paper to hold in your hand. But we go with the students have essays, they have personal statements, general questions that they have to answer, and Dr. Brahman usually works with them on all of that. I work with them on, they have to fill out applications such as name, address, phone number, date of birth, that kind of thing. It's amazing how many times they will have a little typo in there. We had one student one year that was born in the actual year he was applying for the scholarship.
A child prodigy.
I thought that, little things like that you need another pair of eyes to look at it, to notice things like that. So Dr. Brahman works with them on making sure all the paragraphs are correct in the way of commas and word splices and so on and so forth, and I get to go in and say, okay, this is spelled wrong, or you didn't fill out this blank, and then make sure that the application, we've got the transcripts and letters of recommendations and everything already.
I understand that interviews are a very important part of the regional and national competition, and how do you prepare them for those interviews?
We've just gone through that, just finished with some of that. For instance, the Marshall Scholarship, we had this year 2 students go down to Houston for interviews. Again, we start pulling in faculty members, and generally people that have helped us before, that have either been on the committee, the selection committee, the OSU selection committee, or in the student's area that they're majoring in. And then usually we have, like Bob Spurrier, the honors director, will come in and help us out on those interviews. And each faculty person has been given a copy of the student's application. And as I always tell the students, anything you put on that application, either in an OSU interview or a national interview, is open for questions. So they have to, we stress that anything they put on there, if they say, I know about this, they better know about it because somebody's going to ask them about it. So that's one of the things. Just a lot of students we have found have not been in an interview situation. Coming, from high school into college, you don't go through interviews. A lot of them would not even go through an interview until they start looking for a job. So this is just good practice for them.
And let's see if I understand it correctly. They'll actually, you have some of the faculty, and then they ask them some of the hardball questions. They are, but
some
then
of them do.
They'll interview them. Then they understand. They tape the interviews, and then do they then sit down and student critique in the interviews. They coach them a little bit that way.
We have in the past taped them, and given the tape to the students. There are some that, as I'm sitting here trying to hold my hand so I don't put my hand up over my face, there will be a lot of students who would want to put their hand over their face while they're talking, which you don't notice that you're doing that until you see it on a tape. So those are things that really helps them. We try not to make them so self-conscious that they're so nervous that they can't go through an interview, but just to point out things like that.
And stepping back for a moment, Gail, we've been talking about the specific, more immediate kinds of things, but I guess from the day one that they start in a freshman research project or sophomore as a Wentz, they're actually preparing them. Do you direct them with some, I know Bob Grumman teaches us a class, some Windows on the World or something like that. So, honors, we encourage them to take honors classes. You mentioned earlier to kind of have a minor, second major to branch out in some fields and broaden themselves. So, are there anything else you can add? I mean, these are the general kinds of things that how your office encourages people early on as they're moving through the process.
We encourage them to think about having a minor or a second major. I don't want to be specific, but for instance, an engineer, there's a lot of things specific to engineers that they have to take for their major. But we encourage them to take more humanities classes, to broaden themselves. And that's what we try to do, or encourage them to. Of course, can't make them do it, but just encourage them to look a little bit further than just their specific major.
Well, Gill, are there other components or activities of the Scholar Development Recognition Program that we haven't mentioned that you'd wonder? I mean, for example, there's the trip to Cambridge each summer, but that, and are there other things that we would want to lift up about the Scholar Development Program that we haven't discussed?
I'm sure I'll think of quite a few after this is over, but I can't think of anything right now.
Well, what about Bob was excited, and a couple of other people interviewed about the trip to Cambridge that they take, that I think your office sponsors each summer. Could you say a little bit about that?
They usually go to Cambridge, England, usually a couple of weeks in July. They have different professors that will go over and teach different topics. Like next year it's going to be in the food production area. Last year it was in the English area.
Humanities, maybe.
Pardon me, in the humanities area. We've done one on leadership, and try to relate it on the students, how they are doing in college now, what, like in the humanities areas, how does the writers from England that were actually in those areas, the students can walk down the streets and say, this is where so-and-so wrote his famous book, and that type of thing. And it really encouraged them to get out, to travel more. A lot of the students will then go on to apply for overseas studies, for Fulbright awards, and different programs like that we try and encourage them for.
Gail, at the nuts and bolts level, you know, where you see it, what makes the program go? I mean, what's the chemistry there?
The chemistry
on a day-to-day basis.
In the department?
In the department.
We have a very small department. It's just Dr. Grauman and I. We actually have a graduate student working with us right now that's working on the freshman research program.
You did win scholar. You should have one of those too.
That's right.
Yeah.
You would think we would have one, wouldn't you? It's more of a, it's not like this is your job, this is what area you're supposed to do. We all work with the students, we all talk with the students, we all look at their applications. So it's more of a group effort.
Well, what are there, I'm trying to say the total scope of the program and how you engage professors and engage administrators? Could you maybe speak a little bit to some individuals who have been, you know, really long-standing troopers that have really would give a 5-star rating to in the program that you want to be, administrators and/or professors?
Administrators and/or professors. One administrator that comes to mind is Ed Miller in agriculture. He has been a supporter of our program for years. The fact that a lot of the Truman Scholars have been coming out of Ag Econ probably hasn't hurt the situation any. We've had a lot of biochemistry, a lot of, another person that comes to mind is Russ Reinhardt in chemistry, chemical engineering. He's been on the Wentz committee, he's been on the Truman committee. Anytime we need him to come in for an practice interview, he's right there. So knowing that we have these people we can call on has helped us. Otherwise, if we didn't have all the support of the faculty, I don't think we'd be able to do half the things we do.
You mentioned Bob in honors programs, honors
Bob
college.
Spurrier.
Bob Spurrier. Because he's been probably pretty actively engaged in the program, hasn't he?
Definitely. In fact, when we do our practice interviews, he's gotten the reputation of being the one asking the hardest questions and trying to get the students, I don't want to say in an argumentative mood, but you know, to try to rile them up a little bit, just to.
Gail, any administrators, you know, out of the provost's office, out of the president's office, other dean level, or any people that have been champions for the program that you could lift up?
Gail Gates from the provost's office, the academic vice president, has, of course, the fact that she's Dr. Grauman's technically his boss, has been for several years now. Almost everything that we've ever approached her on, she's been right there trying to back us on every program. And she's, anytime we have programs, anytime we have seminars, she's right there to help us.
And I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, that former President Halligan was very positive about the program, talked it up an awful lot.
Yes, he was, he still is. Even though he is retired from being president and is now a senator, he still calls occasionally to find out how we're doing and do we have any scholars and who's applying for what. And President Hargis is a really good backer of our department right now.
Gail, what is your, from your perspective, what is your measurement for success of the scholar program? Number of national scholarships earned, personal growth of students, enhanced reputation, academic reputation of OSU, other, I mean, what's, from your perspective, how do you measure success?
How do I measure success?
In the program.
Do I measure the success from how many winners we get each year? No, I don't. I don't think that's the measure of success. Working with the students, helping them to succeed either in college or going on to graduate school, just to encourage them, to me that's what we're there for.
I guess you've seen a lot of students grow in their 4 years that you've known them, from
yes.
You know, some kid from a small rural school, Oklahoma, to someone very sophisticated when they graduate.
Yes, quite a few. And it's always, I would say lightning to me. It doesn't matter to me. I want the students to win. Of course, everyone wants all the students to win. But you know from the very beginning that they all can't. But just to see the growth, to be able to encourage them, to see that they are thinking about, you know, some of them will come in and say, this is what I want to do in my life. And then as they start filling out applications, have to really stop and think about what they're doing. Some of them change their mind. But we've always had students come in and say, having to sit down and really think about this has been the best thing that's ever happened. So that's to me, that's the best thing. That's what we're there for.
And I'd guess it probably on a personal level, you interact probably personally and more often with the students than anybody in the office. There's got to be over the years, well, first of all, let me ask you this question. In a given year, about how many kids are you interacting with? How many people are you touching in some way?
Each year, other than just handing in an application, for instance, for the Wentz, we're looking at a couple of hundred each year. The number will vary, but the more they fill out the applications, the more they come back year after year, those are the ones you really get to know. And it's wonderful when you hear from them a year or two after they've graduated. They'll send an email and say, just wanted to touch base and this is what I'm doing. And that's wonderful.
And you're kind of going where I was thinking about to ask for follow-up. You worked over the years with hundreds, maybe by now thousands of students. Are there some stories you can tell? Are there some favorite memories that you have of past participants?
Goodness. One student that comes to mind won a Goldwater and a Udall. His name's Nick Rasmussen. Have not heard from Nick in a year yet, but last time he walked in the office, it's been about, I want to say last summer he came by. He's at Rice University now working on his PhD. Should be finishing up his PhD very soon. And he came walking in carrying a little box, and the first thing I said to him was, whatever's in that box, don't let it out. Because Nick was a zoology major, and there was quite often that he would bring bugs over, and that's something I didn't like. So it was not any, hi Nick, how have you been? It was, don't open that box. And sure enough, he had his tarantula in the box with him, and it traveled with him.
Gill, are there some kind of heartwarming stories you have as kids that maybe didn't win a national scholarship, but that you really just, they grew as a person that you hold as pretty special?
Oh, that'd be hard to narrow it down.
Just some examples, random examples.
Seems like there's always something special about each student. One student that I can remember is Cassie Mitchell. She applied for a Goldwater one year, was not selected to go on in the competition for the national competition. And because of encouragement from our office, from Dr. Brahman and from myself, she applied again the next year and actually won it then. And she made a point of telling us that without our encouragement, she would not have ever tried to apply for anything again. And she was a chemical engineering major and is now working on her PhD. And so little stories like that, when you think that okay, maybe you didn't win the first time, but we were able to give some type of encouragement instead of all the deflating of some egos or anything.
Gail, you've been in the program long enough from the early to mid-90s, so it's been maybe nearly 15 years or so, 12, 15 years. Are there some success stories we could talk about that have come through our program that are now out in industry and business and government that we had looked to that have done some, at a fairly early age, have accomplished some fairly significant things?
How many names do you want there? Some that come to mind, of course, one student, Brian Begley, was an engineering major, won the Truman Scholarship. He went on into business, and he is, I can't remember the name of the company he works for now, but he has been very encouraging for our department. for the university and has come back several times to talk with students. He has gone over to Cambridge and talked to students over there about our program and applying for scholarships, and so that's one of the good ones we hear from. Chris Stevens, who won a Truman Scholarship and a Marshall Scholarship, went on to Yale Law School. He's now back in Oklahoma City and working as a lawyer there. And Shannon Farrell, who was a Truman Scholar, he applied for Marshall, went on to law school. He's now back at OSU teaching in the Ag Econ or agricultural law area. Very, very supportive of our office. He's another professor now that we know when we need people interviewing for Truman practice interviews or something, we could call on Shannon. It's hard to go back though and call him, like in this case, Dr. Farrell, but to me, he's still Shannon.
And always will be, right?
That's right.
What have been some, from your perspective, some major milestones in the history of the Scholar Development Program? Some things you could, some points you can say, hey, something special happened, here's some key events.
Well, being there when OSU got their first Rhodes Scholar was a big one. Getting one of the first Marshall Scholars when they started that program. Then there's a Gates Cambridge Scholarship for students to go to study in England. And we had 2 in 1 year. That was just fantastic. And those students have finished their PhDs, and they're encouraging students. They're still, if a student, for instance, is interested in that particular area or that particular scholarship, we can still contact those previous winners, and they will give the students insight and help them in different areas. Like if you want to go to Cambridge to study, they can tell you different departments and areas that are doing research that the student might be interested in. Pardon me, I'm talking too much.
No. Was the designation as a Truman Honor Institution, was that pretty significant?
That was in December of 2000. OSU was selected as a Truman Honor Institute for their success, basically since our offices have started, since they had started the Scholar Development Office, and we had really started working on the national scholarships and had gotten several winners. And the Truman Foundation selected several universities each year, and in 2000 OSU was selected as one of their honor institutes.
Right. How do you, you've seen, for the last 12, 15 years, a lot of changes in the program. How do you see the Scholar Development Recognition Program evolving in the future?
I'm hoping it'll continue on. I mean, Dr. Brown and I are both kind of thinking of retiring in the next couple of years. So to be able to have the office continue and would be something wonderful for us. I know they're talking about trying to endow the office. That's something that I would never have even thought of, years ago. But now it's being talked about a lot, and I'm hoping it'll happen.
Any changes that you think will happen in terms of application emphasis of the program?
I know since most of the national applications are going to strictly online applications, I could see our office needing to do that. More and more students coming into college now have used computers since they were in preschool. This was long before I even knew what a computer was. So I'm thinking, technology is going to have a big play in the next year or two.
I've got to ask you this question before I let you go. Tell me some stuff about Bob Grumman. And I've known Bob a long time, but what's he like to work with?
If you've known him as long as I have, there's nothing I can tell you.
What's Bob meant to the program?
I think he's been a wonderful head for the program. He can go out and talk to people. He can talk to groups. I am the person that stays back in the office and does the paperwork. That's where I want to be. fact, you had to talk long and hard to get me to come over here and do this. But so from that standpoint, I think that's one of the reasons he and I have been able to work together so well, is because, as I say, I can send him out to do all this other stuff, and I can stay back in the office and answer the questions. And
Gil, you indicated kind of your role is a little bit different than Bob's, but so maybe we kind of conclude with this question: what's given you the most satisfaction in your work with the Scholar Development Program? The most personal satisfaction.
The most personal satisfaction? You can't help but feeling young every day when you're working with all these young, wonderful students. I've told more than one that I treat them all like I'm their mother, and I won't go into the fact that probably some of them I could be classified as a grandmother now, but we won't go there. So just being able to work with them on a one-to-one basis, and they're all encouraging.
Yeah, what have we left out? I mean, from your perspective, you have a unique perspective on how this works. You do the nuts and bolts things day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something about the program that we haven't discussed that would be helpful to record for people to know about?
I'm sure I'll think of something later, but now that you've asked the question, now I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, Gail, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.